All right, welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I'm Peter Hostrasser. Allie Dahl is with me. Allie, what's new? And this is in 2025, so what's happening?
Okay, well, there's plenty of new stuff, but the the one thing I was thinking about this, so when this podcast comes out, it's gonna be dark and dreary winter.
Yeah.
But I really, for some people, I mean, some people love the winter, and actually as an educator, I loved the third quarter, and here's why. Because and I just felt like, people could use this reminder. This is when students make the most gains. They do. If you look at the research, that's what it says. And so, if that is encouraging for you on these cold, dark days, remember, nobody has anything to do, so you can do more with the kids.
So
That's
true.
that's awesome. I like that look into it because you think third quarter for regular people are usually the fall, right? But for us as educators in a traditional system, it actually is kind of now heading into the springtime. We get to see like teaching high school is very interesting because you get to see students literally grow up. I've already seen it with some of my seniors going through the internship program. So that's kind of cool. And it might just be because we're giving them great opportunities and real connecting academia and reality. And that's who we're going to bring on today. We have Dr. Sandra Adams with us, who is the administrator at the Career Academy. That's in the Fort Wayne Community Schools in Fort Wayne, Indiana. CT instructional coach there, as well as Race to the Top lead presenter in Ohio Department of Education. Yes, I'm reading this, Sandra. And an adjunct professor at Wright State University back in the day. Also,
Back in the day.
yeah, back in the day. Curriculum consultant also for the Ohio Department of Education. So you got a long rap sheet there of
Long list,
disrupting
long list.
education.
I think
So
I've done it
welcome to
all.
the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I've had my hand in everything in education at this point.
So tell us a little bit then. I know I went kind of back into your education, like your professional world, but so how did you get into education? What was your path like, basically from secondary ed through at least your bachelor's degree at the Toledo? I know the Toledo Mud Hens. That's the baseball team there. So
Rockets,
yeah.
Toledo Rockets. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah,
it
the
is. It
Rockets are
is.
the university. Yes, I'm just saying
It is
the baseball.
comical to me now because I gonna date myself real fast, but when I graduated college in the early 90s, you could not find a job in the comprehensive secondary world of teaching. It was so cutthroat, and everyone wanted me to be a football coach, to which clearly I am not a football coach. And so this teacher shortage that we have today, back in the 90s, I just would never have dreamt this was possible.
Yeah.
And I went into investment sales with my economics minor for 7 years, waiting on a teaching opening. And then yeah, so I taught in the comprehensive high school for about 14 years, and I really became what is called an academic elitist. I think I taught AP. I only wanted to teach AP. I put my children on the college track. And so the irony of today, I am one of the loudest spokespeople for embedding work-based learning into career and tech curriculums and in daily experiences with students. And so it is just really great to see how everyone's path veers into a different way.
Right on.
Yeah.
I mean, walk us through a little bit, of like a little bit more. Like, did you have a moment where you were like, I don't align with this academic elitist? We've heard that term before.
Yeah.
Throw back to Kevin Fleming,
Mhm.
and we know that you are also, it says on your LinkedIn, you are a Catapult speaker. So, like we've definitely talked to Catapult speakers, but this idea of, a recovering academic elitist. Usually there's some moment or some story, it might not have been like instantaneous, but like walk us through a little bit, like when did you decide I'm not bought into this system the
Yeah.
way I used to be?
So mine was very interesting because truthfully, I left education thinking that I could do professional learning better than it had been given to me when I was a teacher. And I started started my own company, and I focused on literacy, and then the starving artist concept. When people would call me, I would just really delve into what it was they needed. And so one of the people who called me about a year and a half into my company was a director and principal for the very school that I am at now, which is very comical. But and it's because that was my buy-in, Allie. That's why I started working for him, and he made me really immerse myself into career and tech ed. And I sat in on classes, and I realized right away that teachers were amazing in the lab, consistently so engaging, the technical skills. But I noticed oftentimes when we go back to the classroom learning that it felt like comprehensive. And I said to the teacher, or to the principal, I said, I really think I can help people be as engaging in the classroom as they are in the lab. And I said, we all know how to teach from how we were taught, if we didn't deliberately go after engaging different ways to teach. And so that led me to writing a few of the books that I have written on just specific career and tech ed literacy, career and tech ed strategies. And I have to tell you, though, about a year after I was working in the classrooms and I started to learn, 20 different pathways. And it was the best because I was the role of an instructional coach. And here I am, 14 years. I think I'm this great professional learning provider. And then I'm sitting in classrooms and I'm starting to see all of the problems with learning for the first time, because I had never, and none of us really get that golden opportunity to be a learner. And so I'm sitting in Ohm's Law lessons. I purposely placed myself in lessons that I didn't know so that I would have to really just immerse myself as, okay, how are the students best learning this information? And what is the best technique to do with this? And so it was a great year. I loved that year. And what happened then was my principal came to me and said that there was a grant opportunity. And he said, we need an innovative idea around career and tech ed. So I went home. It was 2014. Opened my laptop up and I put innovative new things in CTE. And anyway, I found this article, and the article was titled why New York State college interns are running out of jobs. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. So the whole gist of the article was that high school internships had become so popular that they were outpacing college interns. And so I'm one of those, I'm very much a Pollyanna, like the rainbow is bright in my world. And so I was just like, this is it. This is wonderful. And I go back and I'm sitting with some of the teachers and I'm telling them this idea, and they're going like this. I said, you don't like this idea? This is a great idea. And I'm going to poke at my good automotive friends now. But then at the time, they said, Sandy, you just do not understand. Like, no company is going to risk their profit margins to have students go in there with 2 ASE certs and very little practical knowledge of how to fix those cars. And I'm listening to them and I'm thinking, yeah, that all makes really good sense. But I read this article and it just doesn't seem to jive with what I read. So I go to the principal. He is very much like me. So we push the idea, and really had a hard time selling the teachers. And so a software development teacher said, I have 9 students in software development. Can you find 9 companies to take them? And that's the magic of what happened. And I have to tell you, what all happened in that first year of placing those interns changed my view of education forever. So Allie, that is the story. I know it took me a while to get there, but it really was. Everything that happened in that first year of the interns solidified for me that we are in a new age and we have to do education differently. And today, just today, actually, I received the number of interns we have so far this year, and we now have 362 that have practical experience of 75 hours or more with a company of some sort. And so it's just an amazing. It's been a great journey watching students get that authenticity.
I legitimately today just saw on my, because I'm aging myself too. I think I'm right there with you, by the way. Is We're in our early 40s, Allie. So
That's
like
right.
when I wrote a blog about like my wife was doing some candle work. She was selling them, and then my son was 12 years old at the time. Just to give you some look at it, he's almost 20, and a sophomore at a community college, and getting an associate's degree, not a 4 year. So that's where we are, right?
Right.
So, but he was like, they were kind of joking, like he's our intern helping us. And
Hmm.
I took that and I wrote a blog in 2017, a few years after you started this, which is amazing.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. It
about
is.
like, yeah, like why do we not have this anymore,
Mhm.
in education? What I want to know, from that, and thank you for sharing it. It is necessary to go through that whole thing. So don't ever
Right.
apologize for long stories, because that's what we like here in the podcast.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I wanted to like ask you about then, so you've taken some, like, a lot of, what is CTE literacy? What are the strategies in your books? What was it in that first year? If you can name two things out of that first year that was just explosive, like we need this.
I can
Um,
tell you the
yeah.
two things real easily, Peter. Number one was high expectations.
Hmm.
So I walked into check on one of the interns at a company called Aptera, and they said, "Oh, you're here at a perfect time. Ches is in there talking with the cloud architects." So again, it's 2014, and I'm like, "Cloud architect. That is a very impressive title. I did not know that job existed." And I went in, and I remember the word because I'm a literacy lover. So I
Hmm.
remember the word containerization in the cloud architect conversation with Ches. And I remember him nodding. And I thought, oh, okay, so they're keeping the data in containers, and I was just trying to make sense of it. But the level of that conversation is literally the basis for part three in my But I'm Not a Reading Teacher book, because it opened my eyes to the need for industry language.
Yes.
And I call it teaching students to speak like an expert. So, I have these activities where I challenge students to have a conversation so that someone not in software or not in welding wouldn't understand them.
Hmm.
And so that was number one, is that we completely lifted the capacity of every one of those students by putting them in those authentic business culture settings. And the second one, without a doubt, is the equity of opportunity.
Hmm.
And I will say that there was a student who, very interesting. When you spend time with these students day in and day out, you catch on that there are some family problems and maybe some just marginalized life issues.
Hmm.
And we had a student whose name was different. So we all called him Riley. And that was not his actual name. But I noticed that he was impoverished, and I thought maybe he had some other struggles. And very typical, if you've been ever in urban education, you can associate somebody you probably have experienced life with. He
Hmm.
had maybe two outfits, and really just a heart of gold and a passion for coding at the time. And we we set up the interviews so that the students, at the end of all the interviews, the students listed the companies 1 through 9, and then the companies listed their student preference 1 through 9. And I said, Riley, you're number one and number two on every list. Where do you want to go?
Nice.
And so he goes to this company, and everyone loved him because of his humble but passion. And it was this great year that at the end of the year, he was placed with a fabrication industry in Fort Wayne. And they came to me and said, "We really want to hire him. We don't have a position, but we're going to start him at 36,000. And as soon as a coding job, a programming position opens up, then we will put him in that, and he will start around 45,000."
Love
And
it.
this was a boy that I was giving quarters to buy popcorn.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, to this day, we are friends on LinkedIn, and I just can't even tell you. He sent me a little note in June. It's in my literal, I have a shoebox of life. I'm that person. And there's a little piece of paper in there from him that says, Mrs. Adams, he said, me and Gage were talking and didn't know if anyone ever told you thank you, but we understand what you did for us. And I mean, I just
Yeah.
printed that right off and put it in the shoebox of life because he knew. And so over the last 10 years, my absolute favorite part of the internship is knowing that you're putting a student somewhere that may have taken them 8 years to
Yeah.
break the door into. And it's just, oh, and
That's
see,
awesome.
and that's where, that's what I loved comprehensive teaching. I loved everything about it. And, maybe once a year, somebody would go and be a psychology student at Miami University. But the massive amount of people that you can just lift, there's
Mhm.
just nothing to compare to it. Yeah.
Feel that. I feel that.
I mean, in 10 years, you went from 9 students to 360. That's almost a
Yeah.
40x increase,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, awesome. And it's really the right time for those listening. And I love that story. You started with 9, one class. Like,
Yeah.
you can start with small and watch it grow. And, for our listeners, hearing about work-based learning, hearing about internships, hearing about CTE and how to incorporate it. I mean, you talked about like a software engineer class. That seems like not a traditional business class. Like
Yeah.
placing these students. So where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, it's an incredible start. And I think, when we talk about disrupting education, the story you just told and the stories you have told really speak differently. They come across differently when you're in the system. Like you're disrupting from within, right? And you went out, you did your own kind of like consulting or professional development, but then you came back, right? Like
I did.
so, right, like
Can I tell you, Allie, in the vein of what you're saying, when I was doing my Race to the Top work, it overlapped to that year. So I was doing Race to the Top and I was doing my own company. And there was a young man from Rio Grande, Ohio, who said, "Are you teaching now?" And I was there doing the Race to the Top. And I said, No, I'm not. I'm just doing my own thing. And he said, "That's a shame because I really respect people more when they're in the trench." And I was like, noted. Very bold of you to say that. And I noted it. And I honestly, right now, I'm doing a lot of different work to try to really just round out. But I know some people call me a workaholic, but honestly, there is magic to being in the trench because especially, we're living in this exponential age and change is happening at a pace. They call it, the hockey puck stick, where we're on the stick part of change. And it's so true. And if you weren't with students on a daily basis, I think it would be very easy to lose contact with, the passions. And kids have not changed. People don't change. It's just the era that we live in changes. And I think it's important to just keep in contact with students so that you don't lose that edge.
Right.
Right. So like in the last 10 years, what have you seen as the biggest change, from doing the work that you're doing, right? Like what have you seen, if we're on this growth, which we don't disagree with at all, we have totally heard that. Like what would you say to people, in the system, that's primarily our listeners, like what have you seen and like what can we do with those changes? Like what's the opportunity?
So I will say that, I've always been, I'm just going to do a little political reference to Bill Clinton, but I always loved when Bill Clinton was running for office for the first time and he had that sign, I think, that hung on his door that said, "It's the economy, stupid." Do you remember those references? So it's right now is the time that everyone should be disrupting and taking risks because the economy is on our side. And there are partners everywhere. And I don't know if it's true everywhere, but when we ask partners to help us, we are almost never told no. sometimes people will say, can you get back to us? We're in a really busy time. But I'll give you an example that just happened yesterday. And that is in a welding shop. We had reached out to one of the locals for some support, and he brought in blueprint dimensions and had the students break into teams, and they all drew a blueprint. And then the other team of students, they swapped the blueprints, and then they had to analyze them. Well, what he didn't tell the students was he purposely flawed every one of or a dimension in everyone's plan, so that when they drew the blueprint, there was a flaw and none of them caught it. And then when the teams were analyzing the blueprints to figure out how to draw or how to design it, they noticed the flaws, and then they had to have a business meeting, and they had to be very professional in their approach and their feedback to each other. And so it's that where employability skills, those transferable, durable skills, meet technical skills. And I could go on for days. We have graphic design pitches where we have a client who will come in with a company and say, I need a YouTube thumbnail, an Instagram logo, and something I can print. And then they'll go through with the students. And one real interesting one was a man who came in with his wife. They had an excavating company. They were Christian, and they also did NASCAR racing. And they wanted a logo to represent all three facets. And the students, I mean, they just go to work for 2 weeks, and then they come back and they pitch their ideas, and they're super professional about how they pitch the idea. And then they have to tell the client, this is what I heard you say. And so I would just say that if you are not reaching out to companies and getting problems for students to solve, pitches for clients to work on, or getting the students into their environments through different kinds of internships, I just think right now is the time. I mean, you will never find a better time, I don't believe.
No, I agree. And, I think, there's so many things to do. There's so many job openings. There's a lot of different areas where, just like you said, reaching out to your community and really, look, man, all you have to do is give us a problem. We'll come back to you in a couple of days, a week, 2 weeks, or whatever, and we'll pitch it to you. That's what we're building actually in our district, is those micro internships. We're doing what Parker Dewey is doing at the collegiate level, right? And Jeffrey Ross is an amazing dude, but like we're like legitimately, he was like, take it, because I'm not doing secondary. I'm like, all right. And you pull these ideas and you throw them out. Tell me if this is true or not. When students I'm totally just softballed this, Allie, but when students do this work, what do they do right afterwards? I get the instance that these kids they get so curious. They're like, that's awesome. Now can I do this and this and this? And it raises, do you see that? Because that's what I'm seeing in our school district.
Oh, yeah, we do. We see that. We have welding students who will oftentimes want to build their own design and then learn how to use the plasma cutter to connect it to the welding skills that they're doing. And one thing I do notice a lot is students will want to earn additional certifications. And that is something that we always advocate for, and try to pay for students who want to go on an accelerated route themselves. And it is just tremendous. And then we have a lot of community projects that students can work on. And we have a group of electrical students who will frequently go to the Boys and Girls Club of Fort Wayne and donate time and teach students how to wire. And it's just wonderful to see that. And we had a group of criminal justice students who we had a trooper come in and speak to them, and he was giving them some problems to solve. Well, he ended up coming back a third time and then invited students to go to a week-long trooper camp. And we sent 7 students to do that. And so those are the things, just watching the students advance. And, we follow a literacy model that I have believed in for over a decade, and it is the swirl method: speaking, writing, reading, and listening. And so to me, when you can pull away from lecture or direct instruction and truly become a facilitator, then students can get that productive talk, they can get into the productive struggle, and their language abilities increase, their feedback ability increases. And I think we underestimate how much value one partner coming in can be for a class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But the
so
micro business is so interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. All of this work, right? It's taking the classroom outside of the classroom, but you're still, building so many skills. I know one of the biggest arguments that I heard from content core teachers, and is that, well, if the kids don't know the vocabulary, if they haven't been exposed to the concept, then how can they, talk like an expert or,
Right.
do any of this? Like, right, I'm just trying to pose this is like one of the first things that is like a common pushback for particularly core classes. So like, how do you break down those walls? Like, how do you what's the mindset shift here to just speak life into like, look, this is not a real problem. They will still learn it. They'll still meet the standards.
So, it's so interesting that you say that, Allie, because I do still do presentations on the side. And I was recently in Texas at a different ISD. And sometimes when you are an outsider, it's really easy just to say the ugly truth because you don't have to work every day. And you can say, like, you don't have to like me, but this is the idea, hard on ideas, soft on people. And I said, we have known for a long time through the Fisher and Fry literacy research that if you are teaching something that's informational, nonfiction, front loading is not a worthy practice. And we, and I talked about how important it is to learn vocabulary in context. And I'm a huge proponent of having a system just to revisit technical vocabulary throughout the year so that it's retained. But I said, if you are still having students look up words, or if you are still doing that chapter at a glance before you get into the chapter, that has to go on your stop doing list immediately, because you're not helping a student really retain any of that information unless it's done in an engaging, productive way. And so one of my Sandyisms is, you can't construct meaning for someone else. I say that all the time because it's just true. It's never been truer. And so I do get a lot of pushback. A teacher was very, very much against that concept. And I think that the more we teach students about how their own brain works while we're teaching them our content, and that's just my passion for psychology that kind of sneaks in there once in a while, but it's very true. And I will tell you, do you have a minute for a story? It's a good one.
Oh, yeah.
So there was an automotive teacher that when I started back in 2014, I delivered a lot of strategies and then would encourage people. I'd offer to co-teach to get them to use them. And an automotive teacher said, well, I'm teaching the 4 ignition systems. And I said, I know, but if you just facilitate it one time, I think you would really just like it better than a 2-hour lecture on ignition systems. And so finally, it took him 2 years. He finally did it. And the best part was when he lectured and gave direct instruction, he's an amazing question. He had an amazing question ability. He would probe, he'd ask high order questions, he'd ask clarifying questions. He was very good at it, but it was still a 2-hour content delivery. And so he would then, at the week's end, they went into the lab and did the ignition system technical skills, and then they would write an essay. And fortunately for me, he kept the essays semester after semester for a couple of years. So we had this empirical evidence piece that I didn't even know until after the fact. But so we staged his classroom into small groups of 3. We gave everybody an iPad, some speakers to find YouTube videos, the textbooks, some supplementals, a huge piece of butcher paper, and we told them which ignition system they were going to report out on and how to figure it out. We ended up calling this, because I name everything, Figure It Out. And so we brought in some coils and springs and some parts and put them on the table, and then we just gave them 45 minutes. And then the instructor would walk around And the reason he was hesitant to try this, he had told me, was he really just didn't think students could figure it out. And I said, but here is the thing. It doesn't matter if they figure it out. It matters that they are getting messy with constructing the meaning. That's all that matters. And I have to tell you, it was just a thing of beauty, because then when they went into the lab and after they had done the figure it out, and he probed them with questions, and then they wrote their essays, and they were twice as long, and he said much better. And it just became something that every semester was better and better. And it was wonderful. And the students were so engaged for 45 minutes. They because we teach on 3-hour blocks. So for 45 minutes, they just immersed into a team of trying to figure it out. And I recently was reading a book, and the person said that the best gift their dad ever gave them was, he asked them, how many times did you fail this week? And how many ways did you fail? And I thought, I'm going to use that with my staff as a challenge next semester, and just start framing it around that. Because, we all say things like, you can do hard things, and don't be afraid to fail, but you have to live it. You really have to live it. And so I think, by getting students to be proud of how many times they failed in a week, that's such a cool mindset shift.
There's so much there. I'm thinking Jen Sharp, Allie, like from, just getting messy and kind of going through that. That was our last episode with a guest in 2024. Amazing individual. Actually taught Allie how to tandem jump. Is she your tandem jump instructor?
Yeah, she was my instructor.
I don't know if you know this, Sandy, but like Allie is a professional skydiver. So
I forgot. I read that.
Yeah.
I did read that, and I was so jealous. Oh my goodness.
There's only so many things you can fail at there. So just FYI, but anyway, what I love hearing is, even I go back to the experiences that we're having with students this year. We're at this time, the recording, we're about a semester in, so we're about halfway through the year. A lot of the kids are unpacking what you're just speaking of, and it is true. I do have one student that was in marketing, but he was working for a finance company on a team of people, and he had to learn the lingo himself, and he was forced into it. So he was like, I don't know what to do. So I just started jumping into AI and said, teach this to me like I'm a third grader. And it worked. So he figured that out. So I love that. What I wanted to do is step into, so you're at this career academy, and you've been there since 2021. What's happening there? What are you building into? What does that look like? All right, I digress. I'm getting really excited here because I get really excited when we talk students, by the way. What's the history of it? How did it come about? Obviously before you were there, and then like where are you going? What's happening now? What are some trends that you see in career academies that are kind of a piece of a bigger school district or corporation?
Yeah, so it is very interesting, because right now we are in this age of rapid expansion of career and tech. And again, I think it largely relates to the economic need, and that students are really learning from the millennials on college debt. And one of my first questions every year when I go into we have year 2 programs, which is Capstone. And I'll say, how many of you are trying to circumvent some college debt? So one of the big trends we have now, because many students, give the affirmative on that, is that we are trying to move 2 of our programs into associate's degree during high school. And every year, we'll graduate a few students with their associate degree, or halfway. I think last year we graduated 119 of our students had the first semester of their associate's degree done in one industry. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but getting 18 dual credits in one industry is really significant. And so we have 10 programs that accomplish that. And now we're trying to build in some associate degree programs. And we have the other big piece that we end the year with is placing students with businesses. So we do big signing days.
Nice.
And yeah, we had 148 last year signed to go directly to work, and that's across 23 different pathways. So that is something that skilled trades really reigns high in that, but it is just wonderful because we connect the dual credits, we connect the certifications and credentials, and then we really try to get them in with the partners. And then what we're doing is creating our own, our tagline is, "We are tomorrow's talent pipeline."
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that has really come around from our work learning how to tell our story better.
Right.
And, we used to be a place where people could come and some students would explore and some students had the passion and they would develop that and be a CTE completer. In today's world, it's really about accelerating students and trying to see where each student is and meet that industry need and the student need at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So, for instance, last year we added a criminal justice capstone course. We had usually just had a 1-year program, and then, we just keep funneling students. Well, this year we had this group and they just, they got the jailer cert, they got the dispatch certification, they went to the trooper camp, and they wanted to come back and do a capstone program. So we're trying really hard to raise the bar in every program so that the more immersive experiences will be there for students.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that really is so different than just even 10 years ago is just the number of ways that we have now involved partners with our students. Yeah. And I'm really excited. This is our first year that we're also having an ambassador program for students. And that means in our year 2 program, so we have 300 year 2 students, we have selected students within every one of our 28 classrooms to become ambassadors. So when sophomores or 8th graders come in for a tour, those students take the lead. They also will then do the HOSA, the Skills USA, and different contests. So it's been tremendous in watching that. But I would think that the level that students are developing their skills has just really elevated.
Yeah, I agree.
I can't picture a school like that. I can because obviously it exists, but it wasn't my experience. And it's just, it's so encouraging to hear and talk to, you're deep in the work. Your story is awesome. It's super relatable. I know our listeners are going to love this. The one thing I want to say is that for our listeners, reach out to people like you and who, if you're not on level 10, year 10 of this, it's okay. I love that you included this story of year 1, 9 students. You can start small and look where the program is now. You just need a couple yeses and a teacher to say yes and an admin to support you, and you can really innovate. And then of course there are districts like Naperville and other ones that are really trying to innovate. And now I would say for teachers too, now is the time where you can be choosy and where you want to teach and innovate and disrupt. So, if you're thinking maybe I want to switch jobs and you hear this podcast episode,
Yeah. And I will say, Allie, when I've hired 2 new teachers this year, and I tell them, I will give you all the support in the world, but you are the person who makes this program. Mm-hmm. And I try to make sure that everyone knows how much I love change and how much I want them to change. And I talk a lot about, how inspiring is your environment? And if it's not inspiring, what can we do about that? And, just really getting them to see it through the lens of a student and, thinking how students go into those classrooms and say, how do I feel in this room? And do I feel valued? And can I do this? And, the other point you made me think when you were saying that, Allie, was it's always determined by the capacity of the teacher. the level of that program, because you can be a great building leader, but if the teacher is the one who's going to advance that, and we have a dental teacher that is just a tremendous example of that. We never had a year 2 dental program, and we've had dental for a good 25 years, and it's a dental assisting, and she was adamant that she wanted a year 2 class. She went out and found 4 local dentists to provide an internship placement for a dental assistant and teach them the curriculum required. And last year, she was the first one in our area of Indiana to get a pre-radiation certification past her, all 7 of her first year 2s. So again, starting small, I mean, you don't have to go wide, just go deep. And then just the wide comes later. Yeah, I really could not agree more.
I think that's such a great kind of takeaway for our listeners, and I know that you've said it as well, Allie, is when you want to start with something, try something, get creative, take a handful of students. If you're an educator and maybe there's blockers or you're feeling overwhelmed, blah, 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 all this stuff, which we do. Look, I get it. And you dig deep and you just try it with a couple of students and go with it. And then whatever is good out of that creates a story. And that story will then go from 1 to 4. I could almost see this person in the dentistry area that you were talking with, like about that they did that, right? They found 4. Well, it started with 1, and then 1 was like, oh, I got 3 other people, or maybe I got another person going. And that's how I think one of the things that we do as educators is really try to, it's funny, we teach the students not to eat the whole elephant, but we try to eat the whole elephant. And I think what you've brought to the table, Sandy, is exactly like that we need to remember. Look, 2014, when you were talking about that, was 10 years ago, almost 11. And I wrote a blog in 2017 about something that I kind of dreamt up that we should be bringing back. So it takes time, but it's so worth it. When we go back to that one student who got hired, I'm sure like that, when you're looking at students, especially equitable situations, when you're looking with students without, I can tell you every conversation I've had with those students in my 23 years are about, I don't care about degrees. I want skills to make change for my family.
Yeah.
And you
No,
are
it's so
spot
true.
on about that. I
And
love
another part that to add to that, Peter, because of the Perkins federal grant, we are very accountable for our metrics and looking deep into subgroup populations and performance. And we do not have any gaps in performance that are sizable between races, between ethnicities, between genders. And so it's great because we don't have anyone that is standing out as not getting signing day, not getting the dual credits, not earning the CTs. And I'm really proud of that, because that's what happens when you focus on the process. If you just focus on the process and not specifically one program, but just really trying to make it equitable, it does happen. It's really tremendous.
Love that. Allie, I'm going to go final thoughts. What kind of final thoughts you got in this one? Because I know we take a lot of notes, Sandy. So there's a whole bunch.
I figured you did.
It's just probably the piece that I think, I mean, there's a ton in here. So this is very hard to choose. But the nugget that I have not heard before is this idea of signing day for work, or like signing day for your pathway. No. And
it's such a great thing. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I'm picturing it, like I think of like all this celebration that's been going on in education about going to college, or like especially signing day for athletes and what college you're going to. But a signing day to elevate like your pathway, incredible. Anybody could start that kind of celebration at their school. And I'm just thinking about that and how it seems small, but it would totally elevate so many students on their choice.
And we do it right. We bring in a stage. I now rent the Grand Wayne Center, and we have all the company sponsors come in. and their parents and the students, and we put them on a stage and they go up with an employer and sign a certificate. I'm telling you, it is just amazing to see how proud everyone is on that day. I call it a win-win-win because the students, their parents, the employers, the school, everyone wins. It's tremendous. I know I'm pushing really hard we've gone up every year for the 8 years we've done it. And last year I thought, 148 is gonna be hard to beat, but I know.
It's going to happen. So get ready.
I'm super competitive. So I'm always like, are you going to hire this kid? Are you going to hire them?
Right. No, I love that. And that just pushes everybody up. And I really appreciate it. What's great about this is maybe a lot of people aren't going to know because we're behind the scenes and we record these, but actually I am traveling to San Antonio. I'm sure we're going to meet up tomorrow or possibly Friday at the ACTE conference. I'm excited about that. So I will know where to find you. How can you let people know, like if they wanted to reach out to you, their listeners, how do they connect with you and what you're doing?
Oh, LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. And I'm a big advocate for that. Mm-hmm. Just learning I teach the students that as well. We teach them all to create LinkedIn accounts. So a lot of my followers are students and alumni, but it's a great way to connect.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. So that's great. You brought so much. I love the energy. Again, we are taping this in the evening. And full day of work, everything, travel, and we're still excited about it. So I just think it's a calling and I appreciate your energy. Thank you so much for sharing out, what you're doing. It is super important. You're leading the way. I love to see Fort Wayne on the map. Used to do some old video work back in the day out of South Bend. So I'm very familiar with that. That's great that you're
from South Bend. That's fun.
Yeah, I appreciate it. But thank you so much for hanging out with us on the Disrupt Education podcast today.
Thank you, guys. That was wonderful.
All right. So for Allie Dahl, I am Peter Hostrasser. Hey, we'll catch you next time on the podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and share it out. We'll talk to you later. Thank you so much for joining us on this week's episode of the Disrupt Education Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Are you ready to disrupt the educational arena you're a part of? For more ways to get involved in the work we do here at Disrupt Education, check us out at disrupteducation.co or find us on LinkedIn at Peter Hostrasser or Allie Privet.
Our mission here is to help facilitate and amplify changes in the educational system through local initiatives and help you scale them into community movements. Our building network of disruptors in education are working to move beyond scores and grades as the only measure for student learning. If your school district, college, campus, or organization is looking for facilitators of this work, reach out on our website or social media.
And if you have any thoughts or feedback on this week's episode or any episode, we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep pushing the boundaries, taking risks, and most importantly, disrupting education.